Hello and welcome to my channel. If you are new here, hi, hey, hello, my name is Meg and we do crafty things here. So if you like crafty things, please do consider subscribing. And if you are a returning subscriber, thank you so much for subscribing and tuning in to another video. So today we're going to be doing something a little bit different. Yes, you see that correctly. Those are knitting needles. Today we are going to be doing a Harry Potter house scarf tutorial. This is going to be hopefully beginner accessible. I'm going to show you how to do all the stitches, cast on, cast off, the whole 9 yards. So you can make yourself a scarf for this frosty season. Actually, it's not even frosty here now. It's like +7. Like, I don't know what the weather be doing, but anyways, this is what you'll need. I'll be using a 4mm or US size 6 needle. I would recommend you keep your needle size around this. I was going to use a 5mm, but I couldn't find my second needle. But you don't want to go too much smaller than this or too much bigger than that because it will blow the pattern out of proportion. You'll also, of course, need some wool in your colors of choice. I am in Slytherin House, so we're going to be doing some Slytherin House pride here with this ancient Bernat premium yarn I pulled from my yarn bin. It's a soft yarn. I don't even know when I got it or where I got it from. It looks a lot brighter on the screen than it is in real life. It's more of a muted Slytherin-y color. Yeah, I honestly don't even know where I got it. It looks like 2016 was the lot year, so probably around then, and it's color rich green. So that will be my main color today. And then I'm going to second it with this kind of heather gray color that I pulled from my bin. The label on this is long gone, but they are roughly the same thickness. Just this one's a little bit more coarse than that soft green. Now, like I said, this is much coarser. Judging by the texture and the shape of this ball of yarn, I expect that this is a Red Heart Super Saver, probably from Walmart. The color is anyone's guess. I'd guess it's probably called heather gray or medium gray, but that's where I expect this is from. If you're new to knitting though, this icon on your label will tell you the weight of your yarn. So this is a medium size 4. Or rather the green is. I expect the gray is as well, just a little bit more coarse. So there's a few different types of yarn that will fall under this weight, but the main thing is you don't want like a size 4 with a size 2 or like a size 5 with a size 3. You'll drastically warp your pattern if you do that. You'll also need a darning needle, which is also known as a tapestry needle, to weave your ends in at the very end. All right. Let's get into this. So starting with the cast on, I'm going to teach you 2 different methods for casting on. There's a 2 needle cast on, which is kind of, I think, the more formal of the 2, and then there's a finger cast on. But either method starts with a slip knot. So you can, of course, just tie this with your fingers, stick the loop on the needle, pull it tight, and you're good to go. But I like to do it this way. I make like a finger gun. I pinch it with my thumb, and I wrap it around to create an X on the side of my fingers that's facing me. I rotate my hand and there's 2 lines on the top of my fingers. And then I just put my hook or my needle under over, twist it, and then I can pull my fingers out, pull it tight, and the slip knot is already on there. I can just tighten it to my needle. Now you don't actually want it super tight on your needle. You need to be able to move it some because you have to be able to get your second needle in this loop. That's very important. So let's start with the more traditional 2 needle cast on. So with our slip knot on our left hand needle, we're going to take our right needle and we're going to put it through the loop knitwise. Or in other words, we're going to put that needle through the loop behind our left hand needle. Then we're going to wrap our yarn around, which we'll call yarn over, and that's how you'll see it in most patterns. And you're going to yarn over and slowly draw your right hand needle back. And I say slowly because our goal here is to actually grab that yarn. You see that yarn over there? We want to grab that on our right hand needle to essentially make a second loop here. So up close it looks like this. We're going to grab that, and now we've got, if we look, a loop on each needle. Now we want to trade that loop from the right hand needle over to the left one. So now we have 2 loops or 2 stitches cast on to our left hand needle. We want to do this 50 times for this pattern. So let's do it again. We're going to put our right hand needle through the back of the loop, yarn over, and slowly draw our right hand needle back. You may have to pull that little tail out of the way. Once you get into the pattern, it's not a hassle anymore. Pull that right needle back, catch that yarn over to create a second loop on your other needle, and then trade that loop over to have 3 loops on your left hand needle. So this is largely considered the more traditional or formal method of cast on, like I mentioned before. So needless to say, it's not what I do. I do a hand cast on. So I hold my string like this over the pinky, under the ring in middle, over the index, and then I use my thumb to, I twirl a loop of string around my thumb. So I like sink my thumb down on that string and then twist it. I twist it once and I have a loop around my thumb. I pinch where that twist is and then I twirl my thumb underneath the string to just give that loop an extra twist. And then I stick my needle up through the bottom of the loop and pull my thumb out, and then I just tighten it on my needle. So again, I make a loop around my thumb and I twirl it twice, stick my needle from bottom to top, and then just pull it tight on my needle. I find this the easiest and quickest, but to each their own. Some of my friends who love to knit say that this is impossible and preposterous, and it's so much easier to do a 2-needle cast on, but it's all preference. In the end, it doesn't make a difference. So there is no advantage or disadvantage to either, but whatever method you choose, you need to cast on 50 for this pattern. So I've got all 50 of my stitches cast on here. So these need to be snug, but not tight. You need to be able to get a second needle through all of these loops, and that is very important. So now let's look at the 2 different types of stitches this pattern consists of. So the first of which is the standard old knit stitch, which is basically the cast on. So we're going to, with all of our cast on stitches on our left hand needle, take our right needle, put it through the back of our first loop, yarn over, draw our right needle back, catch that yarn over, and then instead of trading our loop over to the left hand needle, we're actually going to push the loop off the left hand needle. So then we just have 1 loop on our right hand needle. Okay, let's do that again. So we're going to push our right hand needle through the back of the topmost loop on the left hand needle. I split my string there. And then I'm going to yarn over, draw my right needle back and catch that yarn over to create a loop on the right hand needle. And I'm going to push the stitch off of the left hand needle. One more time, your right needle goes from front to back along the back side of your left hand needle. You're going to, that's what it looks like from the top if you need to check again. You're going to yarn over, and then you're going to draw that right needle back, grab that yarn over, and push the loop off the left needle. Now the second stitch we're going to do is the purl stitch. So these are 2 very common stitches here. So we're going to pull our string to the front of our work. So in between our needles, we move it to the front. And then instead of going front to back like we did with the knit stitch, we're going to work on the front of the loop. So our right hand needle is going to go through the loop across the front of our left hand needle. And then we're going to essentially do the exact same thing. So this is a knit stitch, but backwards. Maybe that's easier to think about it. So we're going to yarn over, and we're going to pull the right hand needle back, grab that yarn over, and slip the loop off of the left hand needle. So again, your needle inserts into the loop along the front side of the needle, and our yarn is in the front right now. We yarn over, grab that loop, and push the one off of the left hand side. So this pattern actually works in rib stitch. So we're going to do a knit one, purl one, rib stitch so that either side of your work is visible will look good. So our first stitch is going to be a knit stitch. So we're going to put our right hand needle through the back of that topmost left hand loop, yarn over, pull it back through, and then push that loop off the left hand needle. Now we're going to do a purl. So we're going to move our working yarn to the front of our work, and we're going to put our right needle through the loop on the front side of the left needle, yarn over, draw that yarn through, and pull the loop off the left hand needle. Now we're going to knit, so we're going to pull our string to the back, put our needle through the back of the loop, yarn over, draw through, push the left loop off. Move our working yarn forward, needle through the front of the loop, yarn over, pull the loop off. And we're going to continue to alternate knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. And this is a pattern we'll carry through the entire scarf. So we're going to knit, purl, knit, purl. So it's a rib stitch, and it's knit one, purl one, rib stitch. And what this allows us to do is create a fabric that is essentially reversible. Because this is a scarf, obviously when you twist it, you knot it, both sides can be visible at any given time. So you want to make sure both sides look good. Now to get that classic knit look, that's why we're doing the rib stitch. You can get that classic look with like a stockinette stitch, but the back side of a stockinette stitch doesn't look the same as the front side. So it's not ideal for what we're looking for here, which is just that classic knit look on both sides. So we're going to carry this through, going through all of these knit one, purl one, until all of the loops are transferred over to your right hand needle. And then you just switch hands. You move your right hand needle over to your left hand and do the same thing over again. Knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one. And you want to do this for 40 rows. Now here's after a few rows here, so you guys can see that kind of classic knit look. So all of these little V's on the front and the back are our knit stitches. And if we pull our fabric apart here, we can see the purl wales in the middle, which are these horizontal lines. Those are all of your purl stitches. So anything that is a V, that is where you knit. Anything that is a line, that is where you purl. So there's a little tip for figuring out where you are in your pattern in your actual row. If you don't want to go back and count like knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, knit one, purl one, up to where you are. If you're on top of a V, it's a knit stitch. If you're on top of a line, it's a purl. And you want to do this 40 times. We need 40 rows in our main color of just knit, purl, knit, purl, knit, purl. So let's get through that and join back here in a little bit so we can color switch, go over some tips for figuring out where you are in your pattern. Okay, so I have done a big green section here. I've actually done more than just that first section, but just so you guys can kind of see what our pattern is going to look like here. And I'm so excited. It looks so good. And we see the rib stitch gives us this stretchy fabric and just this classic knit look. Oh, I love it so much. I haven't knit in a long time and I'm really loving the scarf. I don't knit super fast, so that's why I don't do it very often. I find crochet, it builds up faster. So let's look at how to actually figure out where you are in your pattern. So as I said previously, all of these little V's are your knit stitches. And all of the spaces in between, the lines, are your purl stitches. So the easiest way to figure out what row you're on is actually by counting your little V's. So this would be one row, the V above it would be our second row, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, and so on and so forth. The main important thing you want to remember is that you count all your V's up to your needle, and remember that there is one stitch on your needle that doesn't appear as a V. Now for this particular pattern, because this green section is an even number, another kind of trick to know if you're on the right row is that your color change should happen on the same side as your initial string for this first section. So your tails should end up on the same side, and then because your stripes are odd numbers, they should end up on the opposite of each other. Which will make more sense here once we change color and you guys see. So let's get into that. I'm just going to cut this green right off. Okay, I didn't tie it or anything. And we're going to grab our secondary color. So for me, this is gray because again, Slytherin House Pride. And I'm just going to kind of fold it over. I don't knot it or anything. I just kind of fold it over. So I'm going to pretend like this is essentially my normal string, like I didn't change anything here. I'm just going to pinch my tail on the back side of my work for that green so that this loop stays kind of firm when I knit into it. I'm going to just slide my string over top of my needle instead of doing an actual like yarn over for my first knit stitch here. And then when I draw back, I'm just going to grab that gray string and just treat it like a normal knit stitch. You will have to hold the tails. You maybe have to pull them, adjust them, keep them tight there for the first couple stitches, because of course the other thing you don't want to do is pull your string too tight and pull it right out altogether. So you want to hold on to it for the first couple stitches, and then you should be able to let that tail go. It should work just fine, as if you never switched colors at all. And yes, this is the second set of nails on I've had in this video. This should tell you how long it takes me to knit, okay? We started this video with one set of nails. We are in the second set of nails, and this is not the last set of nails that you guys will see through the duration of this video. Now, so far as this pattern goes, at this point, if you wanted to do that like year one solid color block look, you would go ahead and carry on with your gray for 40 rows, doing the exact same thing we just did. But if you're looking for the narrow stripe kind of version that's in the later films, we're going to do this for 3 rows with our gray color, knit 1, purl 1. Okay, so now we're nearing the end of row 3 with our gray, and we're getting ready to do another color change. But I just want to take this a moment to kind of show you guys what I meant before when I said you can count up to the one before what's on the needle. So we count 1, 2 V shapes, and then we know there's one on the needle because our color change tails are on the right, and we're supposed to do 3 rows. So 2 rows would have our tails back on the right hand side, but as you can see, our string is on the left hand side, so the opposite side, and we know we've done more than 1 row. So that's kind of a additional way to figure out where you are in the pattern. So count your V's and remember there's 1 extra V on your needle. Now, if you struggled with that last color change, this is kind of my cheater pumpkin eater beginner way that I used to do color changes. So with my color I was changing to, I'd make a slip knot and just set it down, set it aside. And I'd put my needle through like I was going to knit. And rather than just folding the string over, I would slide the slip knot onto my right hand needle that I was supposed to yarn over with and pull it snug. And that way you don't have to hold the strings in place. And then I would go a step further and just tie these two tails together for my two different colors. So then they held themselves in place and I could concentrate on actually holding the needles and trying to knit and keep my gauge consistent. So if you did struggle with trying to keep a hold of the tails and pulling them tight and keeping them from getting too loose, this is also an option. Some professionals out there are probably shrieking at the screen, but you know what? At the end of the day, it gets done the same way. Just don't tie that knot too tight so you can undo it later when you go to weave your ends in, and you'll be Gucci. Now, the only thing you have to worry about is that knot may try to work its way up through a stitch, and you just give the tail a tug and pull it back through. I actually had some stitches fall off my needle here, and I put this one on backwards, so that's what I was fixing there. If you're like, what the heck did you just do? I just turned it around the proper direction. And we can see here that knot did try to pull its way up through, so I just pull it back, and that's that. It's snug as a bug, and I don't have to worry about tugging it and tugging it and tugging it, keeping it tight, pinning it to the back of the work over the first few stitches. It just holds itself in place. So that is an option if you struggled with that first color change. So now that we've done a few stitches with our main color again here, we can actually pause and take a look at our gray stripe and see that again we were correct, because now you can really see those three V shapes or braids, whatever you want to call them. Now we want to carry on doing knit purl for 5 rows, because this stripe needs to be slightly thicker than our 2 gray stripes. But again, if you're just doing that color block look, you would just carry your gray through for the 40 rows. And this is just to highlight that stripe again, now that I've got a couple rows of the green done. It's looking sharp, and we can count those 3 rows very clearly now. So whatever main color you're using, you want to do 5 rows of it, and then we're going to color change back to our gray. And again, we count 4 V's, and there's 1 on our needle. And we also know that we're on the right row because our tail is on the opposite side of our latest color change. So now we're going to switch back to our secondary color. So for me, that's my gray. And as you can see here, I'm just going to untie this, and it's going to look the exact same as that first color change. So you use whatever method works best for you. I know some people may frown on the tying it or whatever, but you know what? Some people say I hold a pen really funny too, but my writing looks better than half of theirs. So the end product gets you to the same result. Work with whatever makes you more comfortable. That's the bottom line here. And again, this stripe is the same size as our first secondary stripe. So this is going to be 3 rows with your secondary color. Again, just carrying on that knit 1, purl 1. So I've done my 3 rows with my gray now, my secondary color. And at this point, that's basically the pattern, because now you're going to switch back to your main color, so green for me, and I'm going to do 40 rows of knit purl to create another large block of color, and then I'm going to do the stripes again. So here's a look at what the back looks like. So it looks just like the front, which is why we did a rib stitch, and the sides, so you guys can see the stripes. They look the same on the front and the back, which is exactly what you want for a scarf, because again, you're going to twist it and knot it and all that. So this is what we're looking like. Oh, it looks so good. Now, if you're interested in actually reading the pattern, I do have it here. You guys can screen grab it if you would like, so you have it on your phone or whatever. And otherwise, I'm going to continue knitting here until I get to a point that we can cast off. So once you've reached the length you want, we're going to cast off. So like it's a normal row, we're going to knit one and then purl one. And then we're going to stop and we're going to pull the bottom loop off of the right needle, pulling it over top of that upper loop and pulling it completely off the needles. So the bottom one goes over the top one and off the needles. Okay, then we're going to knit our next stitch. And then we're going to pull the bottom of the 2 stitches over the top one and right off the needles. And we're going to continue to work like that in groups of 2. So now I'm going to purl my next stitch, so I'm keeping with the pattern of the scarf. And I'm going to pull that bottom stitch over the top one and right off of the needles. And then we're going to knit. And there should never be more than 2 stitches on that right hand needle while you're casting off. And if you pay attention here, you'll notice that our work is coming out the right side with like a finished top. There's no more loops there. It's just closed off. So that's what you're doing when you cast off. You're finishing off the piece, closing off all those loops that are on your needle regularly. And once you're down to your last loop, you are done. You can just cut the string, pull your loop loose, and pull that loose end through the loop, and that will tighten it off. I'm not done the length I want. I'm just a slow knitter, so I'm going to leave my loop there for the sake of going back and finishing it later. But we do have one step left, and that is weaving in our ends. And this is going to hide all these tails and give us a nice clean edge like you see here. So there's 2 methods we're going to do with this. The first one is an invisible rib weave. And then the second one, because our stripes are so narrow, is just kind of a, I don't know, invisible make it work. I don't know if it has a formal name. I'm not sure. But I'm going to use this darning needle. Some people call it a tapestry needle. It's essentially a large blunt needle. They come in plastic and metal, and they basically just have a large eye on them for wool or thicker strings. And what I'm going to do with this is I'm going to feed the tail of our yarn up through the right hand side of our knit stitches and then down through the left hand side. So each knit stitch is like a little V here. So there's a right side and a left side, obviously. And it's a little bit easier to see here in the work, so that's why I'm showing you over here. Now, I'm not talking about the purl stitches, okay? I'm not talking about these horizontal lines in here, the purl whales. I am specifically talking about the right hand side of the V's that make up our knit stitches. So on the edge, it's a little more wonky, but you can see here if you look closely, like there's a V, there's one, you get the picture. So we're going to feed this tail up through underneath the right hand side of maybe 4 or 5 rows of our knit stitches here. So I'm going to insert my needle from the right in towards the center of the stitch, only picking up the right hand side. And I'm going to grab 3 or 4, maybe even 5 stitches, whatever you feel comfortable with. You don't have to go too crazy, because we are going to pull it through and then turn our work and weave it back down the other side. So I did 5, and I'm going to turn my work upside down, and I'm going to do the same thing back, but in reverse. So you can't go from the right hand side in towards the center when you're going this direction, because A, you'll have a big string hanging out the top, and B, it's basically impossible, or not impossible, but very difficult. So we're going to go from the left to the right, from the inner side towards the outside of the knit stitch, gathering only the side we didn't gather last time. I hope that explanation makes sense with the video here. Now, once you've done that and weave the back through to where you started, you're going to just pull the fabric so that end kind of distributes evenly, and then you can just snip it off. Now, because our gray stripe is obviously too short to do that, and you would totally see it all through our green stripes there, we're going to just kind of make it work. We just want to hide it within the stitches. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to we're going to feed it through sideways. So we're going to go underneath both sides of the knit stitch. So in the middle of the entire knit stitch, and then I'm going to wrap it around underneath one of the purl stitches in when we spread the fabric, and then through the knit stitch, through the purl stitch. You'll see what I mean here. So I'm through the right hand side and the left hand side of this V, and then I'm going to stretch my fabric, and I'm going to go from the bottom through the bottom to the top of the purl stitch. So that way, if the fabric does stretch, you don't see this weird excess string in there. And I'm just going to pull it through because it's easier for me. And I'm going to go through another knit stitch, both sides, and go through a purl loop from the bottom to the top. And I'm going to go through a few stitches like this until I feel like it's secure. Now this one you don't have to, or I didn't weave back at all. I just weaved it across 4 or 5 stitches, and with the grabbing the purl makes it feel tighter, so I wasn't too concerned about weaving it back or anything. And you're going to do that for all of your stripes. So if it's in the big section, you can do that rib weave, and if it's in the smaller sections, you just kind of weave it sideways. And you can snip all your ends off right close to your work, and you should have a product that looks like this. Maybe I'll just make like a collar, put some silver buttons on there. That could be kind of cute. Just like a scarf collar instead of a full-size scarf. Nah, I'm gonna make my full-size scarf still, but that would be kind of cute. Maybe I'll do that sometime. Experiment, see what it looks like. So as you can see, now our ends are woven in. You can't tell, they're invisible. They're hidden in there well, and both sides of this just look so good. I'm so excited to finish this. So if you guys found this helpful and you're knitting a scarf now, please do give this video a thumbs up, and until next time, bye.